Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Duart. I am the manager of the Music and Sound Lab at Fort Collins Museum of Discovery. Thank you so much for tuning in to Discovery Live Ask an Expert. We've been running this program weekly during the run of our Mental Health Mind Matters special exhibition. We've had a variety of topics every Wednesday at Friday, all through the duration of the exhibition's run. So this is going to go all the way until January 10th when the exhibit leaves. I'll do a quick plug too. We are completely free to the public now, and as of today, Wednesday the 9th, we are going to be open 7 days a week all through the run of this exhibit. So if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to go to fcmod.org and plan your visit. You can check out our safety guidelines, all that fun stuff before you show up. So today we are lucky enough to have two music therapists from Northern Colorado joining us for the convo. We're hoping that this is going to be nice and interactive, so if you have any questions on Facebook or YouTube, please throw them in the chat, and I'll make sure we get those asked. I want to give a thank you to Ben Gondrez, who's our operator tonight, running the live stream, and also to Eisen Tamkin for setting up our panelists tonight. So, without any further ado, let's meet our two music therapists. We have Faith Halverson Ramos and Anastasia Canfield. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks so much for being here with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
I say tonight, it's 5 o'clock and already dark. Okay, that's Colorado for us, right? All right. Faith, would you mind introducing yourself and we'll just kind of dive in, what got you started in music therapy and what do you do these days?
Okay, great. Well, my name is Faith Halverson Ramos. I'm a licensed professional counselor and board certified music therapist. I maintain a private practice in Longmont called Soundwell Music Therapy, where I work with people throughout the lifespan using music in different ways to enhance quality of life and mental well-being.
Fantastic.
And I don't know if you want me to go into what led me to become a music therapist right now, or if
we'll dive into that later.
Conversation we'll have later. Yeah. Okay, great.
Anastasia.
I'm Anastasia. I am a board certified music therapist and licensed professional counselor candidate. So I am on my way to becoming Faith, essentially. And I work for Rocky Mountain Music Therapy in Longmont. And I also own a private practice called Creative Remedies based in Aurora. I primarily work with all across the all ages, but primarily autism spectrum disorders and other mental health concerns. The majority of my caseload is probably adolescents and young adults.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm going to have a lot of questions because as a musician myself, it's music therapy is something you hear about a lot. But unless you actually have spent some time with someone who's certified and who does the work, it's kind of a mystery, right? There's a lot of allusion to what this is, and people have misconceptions probably. And I'd say whoever wants to speak first, jump in. But let's just, for the viewers, what is music therapy?
The $1,000,000 question. I mean, this is a conversation that even music therapists are continuously grappling with because music can be used in so many different ways in our work and can treat so many different issues or concerns. But in a nutshell, kind of a generic nutshell to try to cover all the bases, music therapy is the use of music by a credentialed professional to address a variety of therapeutic goals and needs. And those needs can be physical, they can be emotional, social, it can address behaviors, it can address speech, cognition.
So in other words, there is no one size fits all. It's definitely much like therapy. It's a very specific to the issue.
Exactly. Yeah, and it can address existential issues, spiritual concerns. It addresses all aspects of being human.
I love that. Much like music.
Absolutely. And if there's anything that I would add, I mean, that was a beautiful way to sort of broadly introduce it. whenever someone asks me, I usually ask them to think about how many different genres of music there are, how many different songs there are, and how many different responses someone can have to those genres, those songs. And that's pretty much how many different ways music therapy can be used too, virtually infinite.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So while we're waiting for some questions again from the viewers, again, this is just my own Nick wants to know kind of stuff. So what drew you into music therapy? How did this end up? Was it a therapy first, and then the music is what spoke to you, or were you musicians beforehand, and then this led you into that realm?
I'll answer first. So let's see. I mean, I was an angsty teenager, and so I think at some point I knew that, and I played piano for my entire life, and I knew at some point that I think it was inevitable that I was going to end up in this field or a field very similar to this. My bachelor's degree is in music, and then my first master's degree is in neurologic music therapy from CSU. And then I just recently finished my degree in mental health counseling from Northwestern. So it was a journey to get where I'm at now with the type of work that I do. But I knew probably my entire life that I was going to be in the music field. And I think my own my own healing that I engaged in as a teenager through music is kind of what led to this decision, to that decision, to that decision, which ultimately music therapy.
Fantastic. I love that. How about you, Faith?
Yeah, well, likewise, angsty teen, had some issues as a teenager, which is why I love working with teens now, because I can go there with them. Um, and similar to Anastasia, music was just a part of my life since the beginning. Like, my earliest memory of making music is being at my grandparents' farm and playing the old player piano and the old pump organ that my grandma had, and just like making sounds and just experimenting. And then as I got older, I went into voice, and my bachelor's is in vocal performance and vocal pedagogy. So I'm classically trained as a singer. And my voice teacher was, she was really cutting edge. Like, she was informed by the Alexander technique. And so I started getting an awareness of how my body and how I feel in my body is connected to how I produce sound and how I show up as a vocalist. And by the time my senior recital came around, I realized that I'm not, the performing thing is not for me. I'm not competitive like that. I'm not disciplined like that, to be perfectly honest. But I realized that what I was most fascinated by is the process of learning a piece of music, connecting with a piece of music on such a deep level that you can get on stage and then perform that piece of music where you have nothing to hide behind. As a vocalist, you are the instrument, and to be able to help other people connect to the music by just using my presence and my voice, I realized I wanted to help other people be able to do that, whether that is formally singing or just being able to have that confidence to show up and use their voices in whatever ways are necessary. And so my voice teacher had a brochure for the Transpersonal Counseling Psychology Music Therapy program at Naropa. It no longer exists. I was part of the last graduating class. And as soon as I read the brochure, here's this program that is training people to become counselors using music that also recognizes that there's more to our experience than what we see and what we can physically feel. And I knew that's was something I was interested in doing. I didn't go to graduate school right away. I took a couple years off, taught English in South Korea for a while, and sang with the choir while I was there, um, and ended up getting sick, getting this respiratory
Oh no.
illness that affected my range.
Every singer's nightmare. Yeah.
Truth. And it sent me into this existential tailspin like, what do I do now? Who am I? And I still had this brochure with me. I had traveled from Wisconsin to the Czech Republic to Denmark to South Korea with this brochure. And I knew that I needed to apply for this program. So that's what led me to music therapy. I had no idea really what music therapy was or how vast and broad of a profession it was until I started at Naropa. I just thought it was, oh, it's psychotherapy with music.
Not quite.
And that's how I approach music therapy, because that's just how my brain is wired. But it blew my mind then, and it continues to blow my mind now, just how many different ways music therapy can be used to help people in all sorts of different healthcare and educational settings.
I feel like that's totally what I'm discovering. The small experience that I have, preparing for this chat and Eisen, my music programming lead, he had a music therapist as an intern this fall, and we got got to learn a bunch from her, and she put together a workshop that we can do those types of things. It was really interesting, just kind of getting thrown into the data of it, but it really does seem like, just like you said, it's so individual to the practitioner, if that's the right term, that you both probably do things very differently for different reasons and a variety of different methods and things like that too, which is really cool because you arrive there differently, much like you said, the genres and things. I mean, it's all very, it's got to be individual, right? That's the whole situation. And again, remind everyone watching right now, please, you can leave us some comments in the chat, Facebook or YouTube. We'll get to those, and I'll make sure we bring them up with our panelists here. So, what I'm trying to think, music therapeutic experiences, MTEs, correct? Is that the right term for those?
Different music therapists call their interventions different things. I know at CSU, it's TME, therapeutic music experiences. So really, it's super close. But I think depending on the school that you go to, the kind of the approach that you pull from, the interventions are called different things. But yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
And when you say intervention, that's another, the term there. I'm going to pull that one apart now. So let's go through maybe a process of, and Anastasia, we're chatting right now. Let's say to you, how does the process work? Does someone come to you and say, I'm interested in music therapy as or I have a problem and we'll develop a technique that will help you? Is it you have certain things that you do and that's why they come to you specifically? How does the conversation start?
Well, I'm going to give you my cop out. It depends. So each person, will approach me as a professional differently. And both of the private practices that I work for, I receive referrals in different ways. So I'll talk about my private practice and how I go through that process. Typically, people will find me on a listing, either the Colorado Association for Music Therapy website listing or Psychology Today. So they're already probably in their mind have an idea of what they think music therapy is, and that they're looking for potentially a music therapist. And a lot of times the first phone call, that's one of the very first questions is like, what do you do? What would you do for me? When in reality, how I work is kind of the opposite. So I'm going to look at what my clients' potential goals are, their strengths, their needs, how another professional might address those needs, or how a counselor, since that's also where I pull from, would address those needs. Then I would apply music later. So everything that I do, I'm thinking about function. I'm thinking about how this individual can can use their strengths where they're at to further their goals or to compensate for need areas. And then I use the music as the driver or the facilitator of that, whatever goal it is that I am addressing.
Cool. I followed all of that. That's fantastic.
Yay.
Faith, did you have any thoughts of that along those lines?
Yeah.
Just thinking process in terms of, how it comes about, how the music therapy is
Yeah.
how the
Some
journey begins.
Yeah, sometimes people contact me specifically because they're looking for music therapy services. And like Anastasia, people will find me through Psychology Today. Um, I'm also, as a counselor, I work with Sounder Mind. So sometimes people get referred to me through there, and then they can read my bio and see if they want to work with someone who uses music or the expressive arts as part of the therapy session. Um, and so a lot of the people who come to me specifically to look to to receive music therapy, because I do both. I have a handful of clients that I do talk therapy with, and then a handful that I do music therapy work with. Um, a lot of the times, the people who come to me to do music therapy, um, they've experienced some sort of trauma or some sort of adverse childhood experience, and they're looking for other ways to be able to work through that that pain in whatever way it's manifesting itself, whether it's anxiety or depression. um, they're looking for ways to be able to work with that don't involve words. So that's part of who comes to me. And then in the course of our work, um, I'm following their lead. I work very much relationally because I believe in the therapeutic and healing benefits of being in relationship,
Sure.
authentic relationship, attuned with other people. So I'm like tracking their body language. I'm listening to their tone of voice. I'm listening to the words that they're using to be able to then determine how might a musical activity be able to support them in getting the experience that it is that they're needing. And so that may be, for some people, making music may feel really intimidating to them. And so maybe we'll just listen to a song that will either that can either help them to ground or can help them tap into the resources that they and strengths that they have available to them, or choosing a song that matches their emotion at that moment. If they're having a difficult time being able to name the emotion, then we find a song that captures sort of that essence of what it is that they're feeling.
Yeah, to help communicate. That's amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. We do have some questions popping up, so we're going to dive into that. Thanks for writing in, everyone. Jeff, we're going to get to your question. What challenges does this pandemic present in a clinical approach that is so reliant on in-person work, and how are you able to accommodate these issues? And whoever wants to
That's a
jump in.
great question.
Well, the internet is very, very helpful. I mean, like where we're at right now. That's probably, well, right now, 100% of my the clients that I'm currently seeing, I'm seeing online because I just a couple weeks ago had a COVID scare myself. Fortunately, I'm fine, but I use a program called Doxy.me, which is a free online and HIPAA compliant uh, like virtual therapy room, I guess you would describe it that way. Um, and clients will log on to my particular room, which is doxy.me /counseling with Anastasia. And we will do our session that way. And it's certainly not ideal. It's not what I would like to do long term. However, for some people, they have responded really well to it. Being in their own environment, in an environment where they're comfortable, rather than an office that they may or may not feel emotionally safe in, I think has been a unique benefit to it. However, also there's a lot that you miss when you can only see from here up, and as Faith mentioned, body language is huge. What people are doing with their feet even at a given time can communicate a lot. And other notorious challenges are, internet outages, other technological failures. And that is incredibly frustrating, and also kind of scary sometimes whenever you are in an emotional place with someone and you start to have some of those issues come up. It can be, I fortunately have not had any safety concerns come up with any of my clients over virtual means, but that is one of my biggest fears right now with doing online counseling and music therapy.
Seems like we're all doing our best with that type of thing. It's the Zoom fatigue and just and like you said, we've all. I was thinking about it yesterday. I told Ben I reset my router just in preparation for this, because you just never know when it's going to duck out, and fingers crossed. But yeah, in an emotional situation, that would be a very difficult thing to have to deal with on top of everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where screening is really important too. Like, as part of the intake or assessing, like, is this person a good candidate for telehealth, or do we need to figure out some other solution? For myself, I mostly see people online. I have a few clients that I see in person because their needs warrant that, but we're all masked. Got my air filter, everything is cleaned afterwards. But some of the challenges that I've encountered in doing telehealth is I haven't been able to do like simultaneous music making because of the lag.
Sure.
So some clients that I work with who have instruments, I might have them play something as a sort of improvisation or as a grounding, as they're talking about what's going on, and I'm observing them starting to get more anxious. Suggest to them, hey, I see your guitar's over there. How about you strum a little bit? And sometimes that can help the person to ground and re-regulate, so that, or get distracted enough that they can then come back to talking about what they want to talk about. Or using recorded music. I've been doing a lot of lyric analysis. Is a music therapy technique that's often used, where you listen to a song and you discuss the lyrics, how a person connects with them, what sort of associations come up with that.
That's awesome. That was going to be a question I had, actually, was the live music component. If you're using a piano or you're just doing some chord changes just to get people in a certain headspace, I mean, are you able to do that? Is it just through the microphone on the computer? Do you have a special setup that you use for those types of things, or have you had to adjust in that regard?
I typically just use my laptop, because as Faith said, most of what I'm doing too is recorded music at this point. I am facilitating some live music, but it's when I'm playing the piano, my laptop picks things up decently well. And as I said, this is not my ideal work environment. And so I'm maybe a little stubborn in trying to hold out, having to get a whole new setup for something that hopefully won't be a forever thing. But I do know quite a few music therapists who have really just kind of revamped their whole music like studio or whatever. They've gotten nice mics and they are doing these Zoom like sound setting tutorials and things, and some people have really gotten into it. I am not one of those people though.
Yeah, it's all right as long as it gets done. That's my
Yeah.
wife is a cello instructor, so she's had an interesting time, moving to all virtual and getting everything. And oh, will this laptop work with just the cello sound? But along those lines, I mean, the biggest thing is she's unable to play duets at the same time because of the lag and that kind of thing. So I can totally understand how that would be. It's just a challenge. You're not in the same room. It's
Yeah.
really tough.
I know some music therapists have adapted to the live interactive music making by just really simplifying what they may play. So just doing some simple holding chords or something on the keyboard to provide some sort of structure and container for the other person to play within, but where the lag isn't as obvious.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And Cindy, let's get to your question now. Thanks for writing in. Without breaking any confidences, can you share a success story you've had in your practices? And Faith, let's go with you first, please.
Oh, wow.
I'm just putting you guys on the spot
Yeah.
tonight.
No, it's like going through my Rolodex, my mental Rolodex. I think a success that comes to mind is working with a school-age kid who would typically be really dysregulated and all over the place, and working with them through playing the piano or playing other instruments to help them to become better regulated and to be able to pay attention and to focus and to actually enjoy being with other people. Yeah, because I'm not currently doing this because of the situation with the schools in our district, but one of the things that I do is I contract with a school program for kids with severe emotional disturbances. And so having kids come into my classroom who are just all over because of a wide variety of reasons and things that they've been exposed to, and then to be able to see them through music become like your typical kid who likes people, wants to have friends, wants to be with the teacher and get that praise and be able to understand themselves as a capable, talented being rather than someone who isn't, which can be some of the messaging some of the kids I work with get.
Sure. Through a different lens, as opposed to, yeah, through the lens of music, they can feel success and feel their identity, and that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. How about you, Anastasia?
I feel like every day there's like success, and I work from a really strengths-based approach, and so that's just kind of how I conceptualize things. But one story, one particular client comes to mind whenever I think about my success as a music therapist, and this was actually in a hospital, so not at either of the practices that I'm currently working at, but this young woman, I was doing daily groups at this hospital, and this young woman had come to a songwriting group that I was doing, and I did a particular type of songwriting that I call fill in the blank songwriting. It's like Mad Libs, but you take a pre-existing song, you remove some of the lyrics, and you put your own spin on it in a way. And this person had really taken to this concept of creating her own songs without necessarily having to do traditional songwriting as people usually think. And this person listened to tons of their own music, and one day came up to me and showed me a song that they had written from one of their preferred artists, and it was truly awesome. And she had put her whole life into it, and it was really, really moving. And we happened to be having a hospital talent show shortly after that. So I asked her if she would be interested in doing something for that. And she asked if I would play the guitar and help her sing her song. And the thing about this person is they had frequently been in and out of this hospital, and after the instance in which she was able to perform, she discharged a little while later, and as far as I know, she has not been back to the hospital. And granted, there's a lot of factors in people's treatment, but I felt like that maybe was an aspect that was really moving for her life, and being able to perform in front of people for the first time, do something that, again, the achievement, and then also the catharsis comes from that, I think will always have a special place in my heart. Thinking about.
That's awesome. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Super cool. And again, right, like you both said at the very beginning, I mean, it's all so different. Everything is so unique to that individual, and every experience seems to be different too. Just a question I've got. In terms of music versus sound, are there pros and cons to, like you're talking about taking part lyrics as one activity that can be done? Are there other things where just soothing sounds themselves can have, the impacts, or do you usually go for chord changes, actual like pre-recorded type things? And sorry, that can be whoever, speak up.
Yeah. For me, it can go either way. For me, it's based on what my client would prefer. I mean, I do have a few singing bowls in my office, and there have been times where clients have been really drawn to that. And so we'll play with just that pure sound. There are also times where if someone is needing help relaxing, I have an ocean drum, and sometimes we'll play that, and it's creating the sound of the ocean that people can find really soothing. Sometimes it brings up memories of being at the ocean, and that can spur on reminiscence, and that can be really powerful for them as well. So in that sense, I'll work with sound. And having graduated from Naropa and having been interested in metaphysical things in my life, I don't deny that on subtle levels that sounds can have impact on us. I don't focus my work in that way, but it's a perspective that I'm capable of holding and acknowledging, if that's something that is relevant to the client.
Sure.
Like Faith said, I primarily work in regards to music, or something that we could, I don't know, most people would label as music. Granted, music and sound, there's so much overlap regardless. I mean, if we even think, music history, John Cage, like what's the difference between music and sound, and what he writes. So I think like a musician. So that's typically how I work. But there is benefit to the organization of sound in any way, and even a lack of organization of sound. What I've done in the past, sometimes with some folks, is I'm working on some group cohesion. I'd have people play percussion instruments and just play whatever they wanted, as loud as, like, their own beat, and then have one individual figure out how to align the sound, align the instruments together to make a beat of some sort, an aligned, cohesive, organized sound experience. But I still would consider that music. However, it also is just sound too. I'm not sure if that entirely answers your question, but
yeah, no, totally. I was just curious. I mean, I think about when I was in college and music and things like that, like just learning intervals from a sight singing standpoint or from ear training and things like that. And I wasn't sure if there, a minor second is obviously kind of jarring to the wrong perspective, but you get like a nice fifth or a fourth. Hey, those are pleasing to the ear and those types of things. I just wasn't sure if that was something that comes up outside of just your uses of popular or otherwise music. And I love that you know John Cage. That's amazing.
And it's actually that's an interesting point. The intervals. Rudolf Steiner uh, had this concept of the intervals as having like specific
character
meanings and associations. Sure. Yeah. I forget. It's a form of music therapy practice that's often practiced in European countries, especially Germany, since that's where he was based from. And I forget the exact term, but yeah, I think sometimes those intervals can, in their work, might take on added meaning, added dimensions. I think it's not dangerous, but I think it's important to, well, here's what I want to say. I think it is a common misconception that in music therapy that music can be prescriptive.
Mhm.
In other words, classical music always makes you feel relaxed. Classical music will enhance your intelligence. And it's not true. We all make our own unique associations to music based on our lived experiences, based on our own neurological wiring, how we perceive sounds and how we make sense of them.
I
And
love that you touched on that. That's
I
been a
think
question I've had.
What's that?
Just whether or not I've always heard that, anecdotally, I guess, from whatever that, who knows, myth busting, but that someone who is a metalhead, they really like heavy metal, this loud stuff, putting on classical, they can have it can be a detrimental, to their neurological effect. Like maybe they don't, just because they don't enjoy that, they haven't built up the whatever it might be. I don't have the right terms, but and then flip flop, it could be the same thing. Someone who's only into classical music might not enjoy a heavy metal concert because of those pathways that are built.
Exactly. And I think Anastasia also made a good point that in our work as music therapists, sound can sometimes be the music. If it's someone banging on a drum, to the outside observer, that may not sound musical. Sometimes for the therapist, that feels really jarring, but that's just that person's expression in that moment, and that's what they're needing. That's how they're expressing themselves. And so in that sense, I think too that we're also working with sound, but sometimes labeling it as music.
Mm-hmm. So we have one question. I'm going to skip over David's for right now, but we'll go back to it. This is from Ben. Have you worked with binaural beats in music therapy at all? And if you have, can you describe what that is and how it works?
I have not actively worked with binaural beats. I'm familiar with it and I listen to it sometimes. I'm going to put out a plug for the online conference for music therapy that's going to be held the first weekend of February. One of the presentations is actually going to be some research done by a Greek music therapist on the use of binaural beats in addiction
cool.
treatment. So someone's using it. It's being used somewhere, and it's actually been researched. Their professor, Dr. Jorg Faulkner with Angela Ruskin University in the UK, who's doing a lot of brain studies, worked with him on that. So I'm looking forward to finding out how binaural beats can be helpful in addiction treatment.
Very interesting.
So that could open up some new doors.
Yeah, absolutely. I have not used binaural beats either, so sorry.
So just one of those things. So we are going to go back to David's question real quick. As a healthcare practitioner, this is him speaking, I've learned the importance of consultations when providing patient care. He's not a music therapist, you want to be clear. He says, how do you integrate music therapy with other practitioners, and especially the performance of having proper training?
That is a good question.
So I've worked in a few hospital settings, and in those settings, it's much easier. You're actually physically there with people. You're usually on the treatment team, and you literally and figuratively have a seat at the table. However, in private practice, and this is probably the toughest thing for me at this point in time, especially with COVID, trying to work collaboratively with other people who are technically my treatment team, my clients' treatment teams, as they are probably receiving speech therapy or occupational therapy, physical therapy, in addition to music therapy and counseling. But that requires a lot more hoops to jump through, and I'm working myself on how to get better about that. For one, sometimes it does not make it very high on the priority list to get releases of information signed, to try to reach out to these other practitioners. And then whenever I do, if they're busy, then, there's a lot of phone tag that can happen. I know that actually is where I drop the ball, I think, the most, is between the phone calls back and forth, and the performance of having proper training. That is really interesting, especially with speech therapy, because there is so much overlap. I mean, there's overlap with all the professions, but speech therapists sometimes use a lot of singing as well, and we may be addressing some of the same, very similar, or even same goals. And it's some of it, I think, is a perspective shift. In, like, a speech therapist may look at at pathology a little bit different than I do. However, I think in the counseling realm, that's another place where there's a lot of overlap, and by no means do music therapists own music. There's nothing about the things that we do that we can, at least using music, not necessarily the things that we do, but using music within a therapeutic setting is not, we can't hold that just for ourselves. And so it's a fine line, and it sometimes is a really difficult conversation to have with other practitioners, explaining some of these things regarding intervals, regarding sound, regarding triggers, regarding preferred music, and the associations that any of us have. But music therapists were trained to look past those associations, hopefully a little bit better, and understand music from a theoretical perspective and things like that than someone who does not necessarily have a music background. And that I think is really where the rub is, because sometimes there are musicians who go into other fields, want to bring music into it. And they do have an understanding of music. However, our training really centers around the client's experience of music more than just using music in therapy. So I feel like I rambled a little bit there. It's complicated, and having the proper training is important, because there is harm that can occur, that can happen, and this is. I'm also going to throw out a plug there that we are going for state licensure as music therapists here in the state of Colorado this year, and so, or I guess next year. And part of the big reason is because there can be harm that occurs if someone does not understand how a client may be triggered by music, or how music can be used in a way that seems to be helpful, but then inadvertently puts them in a dysregulated state. So our board certification hopefully is a gatekeeper for some of those things.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you have any thoughts, Faith, or we can move on? We have some more questions as well.
Yeah. Having worked in hospice, it's in regards to the team, similar to a hospital, it's much easier when you're a music therapist working in hospice to be part of the IDT and to be able to make those sorts of contributions and to provide the insight to the other team members on things that you're seeing in your sessions that they may not see in their sessions, simply because of the nature of the work that one does as a music therapist. And yeah, the whole where do you draw the line with people on how music is used can be complicated, but like Anastasia said, it can be harmful when you think about people who've experienced trauma and how certain songs can be activating for them, or even something as innocuous as putting headphones on an older adult and having them listen to music. How are they perceiving the music? How are they hearing it? What are the volume levels like? Is it disorienting to them?
Mm-hmm.
If they have dementia, is it making them even more confused? And someone who is well-intentioned but not trained may overlook all of these aspects of how a person perceives music, or may be activated or triggered by music. But yeah, in private practice too, it's just to touch on that other point, in private practice, it is challenging to create that sort of collaborative team experience, or really keep everybody in the loop on what's going on.
Mm-hmm. We have a question. Are there efforts being made to offer music therapy as a support in public schools? I don't know if you are aware of any of that things going on there.
There are music therapists who do work in public schools, specifically working with kids who have IEPs. As I mentioned earlier in the talk, I've contracted with the school district in my area for the last 4 years, providing music therapy. I was the music teacher for a specific program for kids with severe emotional disturbances. So there are music therapists who are working in schools. Whether or not that's something that's like universally applied and universally accessible to kids if they don't have IEPs or 504s, that's unknown to me at this point. But it would be great.
Agreed. That's all that I am aware of, at least in the state of Colorado. I know some states, just with differing funding and how things are funneled into schools, there are some actual designated music therapy positions in some schools. I'm thinking particularly of some schools in Texas. However, it is not the norm from what I understand, which is unfortunate. And yeah, and pretty much just, IEPs, things like that. So not across the board, and the kiddos need specific referrals, which to some extent makes sense being a healthcare profession. But I know that some schools offer mental health services regardless of if the child is on an IEP, and I wish that music therapy was like that as well.
Oh, but I will make another plug though. There's an organization here in Colorado. It's a startup called Equity and Associates, and right now they're based in Montrose, and their goal is to provide online mental health services to underserved schools, specifically rural schools. And they contacted me a few months ago because they're interested in being able to provide music therapy as one of those services, to be able to meet those kids who need some other way to be met.
That's fantastic. So, just in following that line of thinking, when you say they need something else, this is something that gets added on after normal therapy. Is this if regular talking therapy isn't having effect, is music therapy something that'll be tried at that point? Then is it usually a next resort type of a thing?
It can be, in my experience, or it's been based on the kid's interest in music and being able to use that existing interest to kind of like lure them into therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I used to call my music therapy just playing guitar in the garage with my friends at 14. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Anastasia.
Oh, I was just going to add on, similar to what Faith had said. I had a supervisor who called music therapy sneak therapy because, yeah, it for some people doesn't feel like they're doing work necessarily at all, and so it can have a different effect in that way, and bringing the walls down, enhancing vulnerability.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, that really is the Mind Matters exhibit that we have in the museum right now, all about destigmatizing therapy as a whole. The conversation around I've been to a therapist. It's something that we have check-ins every now and then. I mean, as an artist myself, like we all have our tough times, and it's nothing to be ashamed about. Um, so it's really nice just to see that there are ways. Maybe music therapy is right for you. Who knows? Oh, we have a friend of the museum, Mr. Jason Wolvington says, "Hey Anastasia, thanks for chatting.
Hi, Jason.
The museum would not be what it is without Mr.
I
Jason
know.
Wolvington.
Yeah.
Fantastic guy. Thanks for watching." And another question. Ooh, that's a good one. What are some other innovations in the music therapy field that you're excited about? What's on the horizon for your industry?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'll jump in with state licensure, hopefully,
Yeah,
in the near future, and more states getting state licensure, because I think that will open so many doors for accessibility for services, and protections for people who would potentially be harmed, without these licenses in place. And with that, I'm hoping, dreaming that there will be more accessibility in regards to insurance, regards to employee assistance programs, and that it will just continue to exponentially grow, for people, for really anyone, hopefully, to have access to music therapy. But I mean, granted, that's part of our healthcare system, I think, in general, that we have to keep dreaming that way. But yeah, that's one of the things that first comes to mind, is getting us on the ballot,
yeah, it's
literally.
very important.
So
One of the things that I'm excited about with our profession is the increasing commitment to social equity and social justice, and being able to address the health disparities that exist in ways that are culturally responsive and that view people as whole, healthy beings rather than as pathologies.
Love that.
And there are more people, more music therapists who are adopting that mindset, getting further trained in other healthcare professions so we can infiltrate the system, so to speak.
Be sneaky, as it were. Sneak therapy. I like it.
Yes.
So we have a few minutes left. We have one follow-up question. Do you have contact info for the organization Montrose? And Ben can probably throw that in the chat too.
Yeah. Let me see if they got their website up, because they're truly a brand new thing. I haven't even started contracting with them yet. So yeah. I think they have a Facebook page, but I'm not sure. I don't remember what their website is.
I'm sure Ben is, our control booth is sleuthing as we speak. So Cindy, stay tuned. We'll see if we can get that out there for you before the end. And I guess for the last, we've got 3 minutes left. This hour has flown by. So first of all, thank you for your time. This has been very informative for me personally. I hope the viewers are enjoying it as well. I want to just talk a little bit about the Mental Health Mind Matters exhibit at the museum. You did the virtual tour with Eisen over the weekend. Any thoughts, any takeaways, any thing you want the visitors to know about it if they haven't been yet? Those types of things. Just curious to see what music therapists thought. And I will say a disclaimer: there's not a lot of music therapy represented in that exhibit, which is why we wanted to make sure to get music therapy on one of these Discovery Lives, and hopefully in our gallery do some programming things as we go forward. So, what did you think?
I thought it was awesome. One of the things that I was really impressed with is that it's so educational and yet not it's not stigmatizing. It's purely I think, and like, this is how some people experience their world, and that's a really beautiful way to start to break down some of those barriers. And that was one of the big takeaways that I had, and that I hope that so many people will go visit it. I can't wait. Faith and I both asked several times, about how long it's going to be there. Can we come see it and stuff in person? So, yeah, that's what really impressed me.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree. I think those interactive experiences where you can get a sense of what it might be like to have a mental illness is so important. It reminded me of the dementia experience that some organizations have, where you can get a sense of what it's like to have dementia, how your senses are affected by that. I also just liked sort of the whimsical way that
it's gorgeous, isn't it? It's a great looking exhibit too.
Yeah. Yeah.
The beautiful wood and the artwork. I guess it was one artist that actually did all the little drawings in there. Yeah, really good. And again, for anyone watching, just a reminder, go to www.fcmod.org. You can plan your visit. We are completely free, thanks to City of Fort Collins, through the run of the exhibit on January 10th. And starting today, we are going to be open 7 days a week from 10 to 6. So we're trying to remove as many barriers to entry for that exhibit as possible. We really hope to see you, and if you have any questions about our health and safety guidelines, it's also on that website. I think we have a capacity of about 50 in the building right now, which is well below. We picked a responsible number for us, not what the state allowed us to do. So we feel very good that we're offering a very safe and informative experience. All of that said, thank you again so much for your time. This has been lovely. Very nice to meet you both and to chat. I really appreciate all the answers. And thanks to everyone watching on YouTube and Facebook land. We're going to be doing this again next Wednesday with a whole new mental health topic. So please tune in. Yeah, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.